Hi everyone, I'm Nicole from Group E. The other members from Group E are Wong, Welinia, Maisara, and Gladys. The title of our research is Impacts of COVID-19 on Economic Growth in Malaysian Tourism Industry and Government Initiatives to Overcome them.
Now, how do you think the COVID-19 affects the world today? How about the tourism industry? How do you think the tourism industry is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Through extensive literature review, we found that COVID-19 pandemic caused 100 million jobs lost in tourism industry and 197 million more jobs are at risk worldwide. This has cost 5.5 trillions of travel and tourism GDP globally. While in Malaysia, we have lost 3.37 billion ringgit in tourism industry within the first 2 months of MCO alone. The Malaysian Association of Hotel has projected that tourism business will suffer 60% loss and 15% of hotels in Malaysia will shut down permanently due to COVID-19. Next, due to this pandemic, three major airlines in the transportation sector, namely AirAsia, Malaysian Air, and Malindo Air, have implemented salary cut ranging from 10% to 100% and initiated unpaid leave. AirAsia is also expected to downsize their operation by laying off a number of cabin crews, pilots, and engineers. While in the accommodation sector, about 170,000 room cancellations were recorded from January to March 2020. This has cost 6.8 million ringgit loss in revenue, and from approximately 50,000 hotel industry workers studied, 13% of them are impacted, whereby 3.76% workers were laid off, 9.31% received pay cut, and 18% were forced to take unpaid leave.
Based on the research that has been done, the impacts of COVID-19 on the tourism industry economy has become a major concern as it led to a lower demand in the tourism industry, which also contributes to the decrement in the country's GDP. Due to the travel ban imposed by the Malaysia in the effort to reduce the spread of coronavirus, it has resulted in large decrease in the number of foreign tourists to come and visit Malaysia. Other than that, most hotels and tourism centers has been closed for a while to avoid mass gathering and to make sure that people stay at home. This has resulted some hotels and airlines to stop operating as they are suffering from big loss of revenue and profit, which has caused their employees to lose their jobs and receive wage cuts. By relating the COVID-19 and the tourism industry, we have come up with these three research questions, which are the focus of our study.
The first objective of our study is to determine whether COVID-19 pandemic affects economic growth in Malaysian tourism industry, especially the transportation and accommodation sector. The second objective is to investigate the impact of the initiative taken by the Malaysian government on the economic growth of Malaysian tourism industry. Lastly, we want to determine whether workers in accommodation sector and transportation sector are aware and satisfied in the actions taken by the Malaysian government. Next, our group have came up with two hypotheses and one proposition for the purpose of the study. Our first hypothesis is that the COVID-19 outbreak will negatively influence the economic growth of tourism industry, especially transportation sector and accommodation sector in Malaysia. Our second hypothesis is that the initiative taken by the government have positive impact on the economic growth of Malaysian tourism industry. Lastly, our proposition is most workers in the tourism industry are aware and satisfied with the actions taken by the Malaysian government to cope in recessing and recovering the economic growth of tourism industry.
To complete this study and address the research questions, we use a quantitative and qualitative mixed methodology. The first method is library research. Library research is used because the research questions is literature-based and involves context analysis from secondary sources such as journals, encyclopedias, reviews, and online newspapers. The second method is online survey or questionnaires via Google form. This method is used to obtain both quantitative and qualitative primary data from the targeted group, which is the workers in the tourism industry. The survey consists of closed-ended and open-ended questions. Multiple choice questions, polling questions, and scanning questions are also used in this research. We use the Likert scale, which is a psychometric scale with 5 items, namely strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. This survey provides anonymity for the respondents to share their own opinions without hesitations. For the sampling method, we use the convenience sampling, which is a non-probability sampling method. Convenience sampling collects samples that are conveniently located around a location or internet service. The convenience sample also can provide rich qualitative information and accurate correlations.
For respondent demography, 43 respondents participated in this survey, 25 males and 18 females. All were Malaysians. 35% ages range from 21 to 30, 26% from 31 to 40, 16% from 41 to 50, and 33% over 51 years old. 5% work in food and beverages sector, 28% in transportation sector, 12% in accommodation and hospitality sector, 16% in entertainment and attraction sector, and finally 39% in the other sector. 93% of respondents agree that the Malaysian tourism industry is negatively affected by COVID-19 pandemic, while 7% disagree with this statement. 46.5% agree that the entertainment and attraction sector was the most affected sector in tourism industry due to COVID-19 pandemic. Next was the accommodation and hospitality sector with percentage of 34.9% and then 11.6% agree with the transportation sector. Lastly, 7% agree that the least affected sector was the food and beverages sector. 81.4% agree that the standard operating procedure introduced by government severely affects the operation of sectors in tourism industry, while 18.6% disagree with this statement. 88.4% acknowledge that their acquaintance or colleagues in the tourism industry face unemployment issues during the COVID-19 pandemic, while 11.6% will oppose this statement. So here's the details for sectors involved in unemployment issues during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Next, the awareness of the respondents towards the initiatives taken by the Malaysian government to cope in recessing the economic growth of tourism industry was assessed. For Prihatin Economic Stimulus Package, ESP, 33 respondents aware of this initiative, while 10 respondents were not aware of this initiative. Next, for National Economic Recovery Plan Penjana Tourism Financing, 31 respondents aware of this initiative, while 12 respondents were not aware of this initiative. Next, for Visit Malaysia 2020 for domestic travel, there were 28 respondents aware of this initiative, while 15 respondents were not aware of this initiative. The level of satisfaction of workers in the tourism industry with the initiatives taken by the Malaysian government to cope in recessing the economic growth of tourism industry in transportation and accommodation sector were also assessed in the survey. The scale of satisfaction level was from 1 to 5, where 1 is when the workers feel very unsatisfied and 5 is when the workers feel very satisfied. As you can see from this chart, the mean of focus satisfaction level towards Prihatin Economic Stimulus Package ESP is 2.767, while mean of focus satisfaction level towards Penjana Tourism Financing PFT is same as mean of focus satisfaction level towards Visit Malaysia 2020, which is 2.605. Therefore, it can be said most workers in the tourism industry are neither satisfied nor dissatisfied with the initiatives introduced by the government. Next, simple regression analysis was also carried out to investigate the impact of the initiatives taken by the Malaysian government on economic growth of Malaysian tourism industry. Based on the regression analysis, the obtained p-value is 0.351, which is greater than 0.05. This shows that there is no significant impact of government's initiatives on economic growth. Next, the positive sign shows that the research hypothesis is supported, where government's initiatives have positive impact on economic growth. Then beta coefficient is 0.105, which means every 1 unit increase in initiative, there will be 10.5% increase in economic growth. Also, value of R square is 0.021, which means magnitude of impact or rate of change of economic growth caused by initiative is 2.1% only. For final section of the survey, we included two open-ended questions that required the respondents' opinion on what their experiences as an employee is working in the tourism industry during the COVID-19 pandemic period, and suggestion on improvements that can be done by the government in the growth of Malaysian tourism industry in transportation and accommodation sectors. From their working experiences in the tourism industry, majority of them are facing so many difficulties. For the time being, most of them could no longer able to work and stay home, which leads to no income. While for suggestions of improvements, most of the respondents showed an inclination toward more promotion packages of local travel, more subsidies and incentives for the tourism industry.
In conclusion, most workers in tourism industry are aware with the initiatives taken by government to cope in recessing and recovering the economic growth. However, most of them are found to be neither satisfied nor dissatisfied with the initiatives. For hypothesis, COVID-19 pandemic affects the economic growth of Malaysian tourism industry, especially transportation sector and accommodation sector is accepted. Our second hypothesis is the initiatives taken by Malaysia government have positive impact on economic growth of Malaysian tourism industry, which is also accepted.
Proceed to the significance of the study. All the major effects of the COVID-19 pandemic to Malaysian tourism industry, especially transportation sector and accommodation sector, will be outlined in this study. In this study, the government could also have a clearer view of how COVID-19 pandemic affects the transportation sector and accommodation sector in Malaysian tourism industry, as well as Malaysian economy adversely. Apart from that, this study might become a reminder to Malaysian citizens whereby they must give full operation to the government by abiding the standard operating procedures (SOP) enforced by the National Security Council strictly. Furthermore, the outcome of this study will further increase the statistical analysis regarding Malaysia's tourism income during the lockdown period. This study also ensures that the new impact of the COVID-19 pandemic to the tourism industry has always been updated in order to ensure that the Malaysian citizens involved in the industry are always updated with the latest information about the COVID-19 virus. Next, impact of the result. From the literature reviews that have been done, the public will be addressed to the contributions of the tourism industry to Malaysian economy. This research is also vital for the public to stay aware and strictly obey the SOP enforced by the National Security Council in order to avoid the current situation in tourism industry become worsened, thus affecting the economic growth of Malaysia. On the other hand, the research will provide a clearer image from the perspective of the workers who are directly impacted by this situation so that the government can implement the best strategy to recuperate the tourism industry that directly impacts Malaysia's economy as well as the well-being of its citizens that is working in the tourism industry. From the research that have been analyzed, the impact and effectiveness of the regulations as well as the awareness and satisfaction of employees working in the accommodation sector and transportation sector in the initiatives taken by Malaysian government during the COVID-19 pandemic towards recessing and recovering the economic growth in tourism industry can be seen. With this, Malaysian government will have deeper understanding in the employees' opinions. Then, the government can make further improvements by proposing new methods in recessing and recovering the economic growth in tourism industry in a more effective way. Hence, stabilize the economy of Malaysia. Moreover, the impact of the research result is that the public will have a better access to the awareness and understanding of the severity of this situation of the workers working in the accommodation and transportation sector, and thus create awareness in hopes that eventually all Malaysian citizens will play their respective role in flattening the curve of COVID-19 cases. That's all from Group E. Thank you.